At the turn of the 20th century, Atlanta wakes slowly beneath a pale southern sun, its streets still damp with morning dew and the memory of smoke that once defined it. The city in 1900 is only 35 years removed from near total destruction, a place rebuilt from ashes after the Civil War and still learning how to stand upright again. Wooden sidewalks creak under leather shoes. Horse-drawn wagons rattle past brick storefronts. The air smells of coal smoke, pine, and fresh bread from neighborhood bakeries. Atlanta calls itself the Gate City of the South, not because it is large, but because it sits at a crossroads of rail lines, ambition, and unresolved history. It feels like a city holding its breath, uncertain of what it will become but convinced it must become something more. In 1900, Atlanta is a city of about 90,000 people, modest by modern standards but bustling by southern ones. Downtown is compact, dense, and loud, with streetcars clanging along Peachtree Street and Whitehall, carrying workers, shoppers, and students between neighborhoods. Most residents live close to where they work, not by choice but by necessity. Walking is the primary mode of transportation, and distance defines daily life. The idea of commuting across miles of city feels unimaginable when the pace of life itself moves at the speed of footsteps and hooves. Nights are darker, quieter, and closer to silence, broken only by gas lamps and the distant whistle of trains. Work in Atlanta in 1900 revolves around physical effort and routine. Cotton still casts a long shadow over the economy, even as the city itself tries to move beyond agriculture into commerce and industry. Textile mills hum on the edges of town, their windows glowing before sunrise as men, women, and children file inside. Railroads employ thousands, tying Atlanta's future to steel tracks stretching toward Birmingham, Chattanooga, and the Atlantic coast. Clerks and accountants work long hours by lamplight, writing in ledgers by hand. Education exists, but for many it is brief, interrupted by the need to earn a living as early as possible. Social structure in 1900 Atlanta is rigid and deeply divided. The scars of slavery and Reconstruction are not abstract ideas. They are lived realities. Segregation shapes where people live, work, and travel. Jim Crow laws dictate daily interactions, reinforcing a racial hierarchy that touches every corner of public life. Black Atlantans build vibrant communities of their own, establishing churches, schools, and businesses despite systemic barriers. Neighborhoods like Sweet Auburn begin to take shape as centers of Black entrepreneurship and culture, offering dignity and opportunity where the wider society refuses to provide it. Atlanta is already a city of contrasts, where progress and injustice exist side by side. Housing at the dawn of the century reflects both hope and hardship. Modest wooden homes line unpaved streets, many without indoor plumbing or electricity. Extended families often share small spaces, relying on front porches as social hubs and sources of relief from the southern heat. Wealthier residents live in larger homes closer to the city center or on newly developed streets shaded by trees. These houses symbolize aspiration as much as comfort, proof that Atlanta believes in its future, even when the present remains fragile. The environment in 1900 Atlanta feels close and immediate. Forests press in at the city's edges, and creeks and red clay soil shape the land as much as human hands do. Summers are oppressive, winters mild but unpredictable. The city's relationship with nature is practical, rather than romantic. Trees are cut for fuel and construction. Waterways serve industry and daily needs. There is little thought of conservation in the modern sense, only survival and growth. Atlanta is still small enough that the countryside feels just a short walk away. As the decades pass, Atlanta begins to change, sometimes slowly, sometimes in bursts of transformation that reshape its identity. By the mid-20th century, highways carve through neighborhoods. Airplanes lift off from a growing airport, and civil rights leaders gather to challenge the very social structures that defined the city in 1900. These layers of history accumulate quietly beneath the modern skyline, setting the stage for the Atlanta of 2026, a city that feels almost unrecognizable when compared to its earlier self. In 2026, Atlanta greets the morning with a different kind of energy. The skyline rises in glass and steel, reflecting the sun in sharp angles that speak of ambition and scale. The city stretches outward in every direction, its population now exceeding 6 million in the metropolitan area. Highways pulse with traffic before dawn, carrying commuters from suburbs that did not exist a century earlier. The soundscape is constant: engines, horns, construction, voices from countless languages blending into a steady urban rhythm. Atlanta is no longer holding its breath. It is in constant motion. Transportation defines daily life in modern Atlanta in ways unimaginable in 1900. Cars dominate the landscape, shaping where people live and how they experience the city. Commutes can last an hour or more, turning time itself into a valuable commodity. MARTA trains glide beneath the city and above ground, offering an alternative to traffic while symbolizing ongoing debates about urban planning and equity. Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, one of the busiest in the world, connects the city to every corner of the globe, transforming Atlanta from a regional hub into an international gateway. Travel that once took days by rail now takes hours by air. Work in 2026, Atlanta reflects a global digital economy. Corporate headquarters rise downtown and in midtown, housing finance, media, logistics, and technology firms. Remote work blurs the line between home and office, a concept that would have been incomprehensible to workers in 1900. Startups share space with multinational corporations, and innovation is as likely to happen in a coffee shop as in a boardroom. The city's economy is no longer defined by what it produces with its hands, but by ideas, services, and connections. Education has become central to Atlanta's identity. Universities and colleges attract students from around the world, turning the city into a center of research and cultural exchange. Access to education is broader than it was in 1900, though inequalities persist in different forms. Classrooms are filled with technology, and information travels instantly, reshaping how knowledge is acquired and shared. The promise of upward mobility still draws people to Atlanta, echoing the hopes of those who arrived more than a century earlier. Social structure in 2026 is more fluid and complex, shaped by decades of struggle and change. Segregation is no longer written into law, and Atlanta proudly celebrates its role in the civil rights movement. The city has produced leaders who changed the nation's understanding of justice and equality. Yet disparities remain, visible in housing costs, school funding, and access to opportunity. Gentrification transforms historic neighborhoods, bringing investment while displacing long-time residents. Atlanta continues to wrestle with the same fundamental questions it faced in 1900. Who belongs? Who benefits, and how progress should be measured? Housing in modern Atlanta reflects both prosperity and tension. Luxury apartments rise alongside historic homes, their glass balconies overlooking streets once lined with modest wooden houses. Suburbs sprawl far beyond the city's original boundaries, offering space and privacy at the cost of longer commutes and environmental impact. Housing has become a symbol of success and security, but also a source of anxiety as prices climb and affordability becomes a central concern. The idea of home, once rooted in proximity and necessity, is now tied to lifestyle and identity. The environment in 2026 Atlanta is carefully managed yet increasingly vulnerable. Trees still define the city, earning it the nickname the city in a forest, but development pressures strain green spaces and waterways. Climate change brings hotter summers, heavier rains, and new challenges to infrastructure. Conversations about sustainability, conservation, and resilience shape policy and planning in ways that would have seemed foreign in 1900. Atlanta's relationship with nature has shifted from extraction to stewardship, driven by an awareness of global consequences. Technology weaves through every aspect of life in 2026. Smartphones connect residents to information, services, and each other in real time. Navigation apps guide drivers through traffic-choked streets. Social media shapes culture and community, amplifying voices while sometimes deepening divides. The pace of life feels faster, more compressed, as moments that once unfolded slowly are now measured in notifications and updates. Time itself feels different, stretched thin by constant connectivity. Yet despite all this change, echoes of 1900 remain. Peachtree Street still runs through the heart of the city, though its meaning has evolved. Churches continue to serve as anchors of community, just as they did more than a century ago. The spirit of reinvention, born from destruction and necessity, still defines Atlanta's character. The city's ability to adapt, to rebuild, and to imagine itself anew connects past and present in ways that are subtle but powerful. When viewed side by side, Atlanta in 1900 and Atlanta in 2026 tell a story larger than buildings and population counts. They reveal how technology reshapes daily life, how social movements redefine identity, and how cities carry their histories forward even as they change. The horse-drawn wagons and streetcars of 1900 laid the groundwork for highways and airports. The segregated neighborhoods of the past set the stage for ongoing conversations about equity and inclusion. Every generation inherits the choices of the last, adding its own layer to the city's story. Atlanta's global significance in 2026 stands in sharp contrast to its regional role in 1900. Once a southern crossroads, it is now a global city, influencing culture, business, and politics far beyond Georgia's borders. Music, film, and media produced in Atlanta reach audiences worldwide, shaping how the city is seen and understood. This global presence is not accidental. It is the result of decades of investment, struggle, and vision, rooted in a belief that Atlanta could be more than its past. As the documentary lens pulls back, the transformation of Atlanta becomes a reflection of human progress itself. Cities grow not just in size but in complexity, carrying forward both triumphs and contradictions. Atlanta's journey from a recovering railroad town to a sprawling global metropolis mirrors broader changes in society, technology, and values. It reminds us that progress is rarely linear, that every advance brings new challenges, and that the passage of time leaves nothing untouched. In the end, Atlanta is not defined solely by what it was or what it is, but by the continuous movement between those states. The red clay streets of 1900 and the glass towers of 2026 are chapters in the same story, bound together by human ambition, resilience, and imagination. As the city continues to evolve, it stands as a living testament to the idea that places, like people, are shaped by where they have been and where they dare to go next.